We are now live. Uh,
Oh,
hello, hello. My name's Duncan, and this week, I've got a guest with me, the legendary Shawn Standfast, who's come to join me after my ramblings of last week to probably put me to rights. I'm guessing.
oh, that's I just noticed our names aren't up there. Usually they come up on.
Oh, I can probably. Why have we got no names there?
Well, it doesn't matter. All of a
Yeah, no,
sudden.
I'm just wondering why there's no names. It could be the fact that. So, let me find the settings on this somewhere. There they are. Technology, general. Layouts.
Oh, jeez, the dog.
Nobody's banned. Sorry.
Oh, I just say I'm listening to the. I can hear your dog in the
Oh,
background.
yeah, that's the other one. That's not the one that was causing the problems. The whining in the background. I've said I have 3 dogs here, so
There's like cat next door, 3 or 4, and they get to barking at times, and then a woman just screams at them. So I got a banshee and 4 dogs barking all the time. It's
yeah,
like,
I have no idea where our names have gone this week, so
yeah,
I think
okay.
they know who we are anyway. They'll work it out. But yes, if people hear some whining in the background, that is one of my dogs. The other one will probably bark at it, and I have one in here. And the reason I have an orange room at the moment is because it's bright sunshine out there, and if I leave my blinds open, the dog sees people walking past. My other little one that's down there, and she just likes to bark at people randomly. So I'm
You
living in
got
a sort of.
sun there. I don't have any sun.
Oh, we have. It's been about 18, 19 degrees here all week,
Oh,
which for
Jesus.
us is really warm.
12. 12.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
been,
yeah. So anybody hears noises in the background, that's my dog's doing weird stuff. So anyway, last week I was talking about I my statement was YouTube has a problem with classics, and it's just the pressure people seem to put on people to read classics. And there was an article that I brought up that was from the Guardian, saying all the books that people said they have to read and they want to read, and there's things like War and Peace on there and things like that. And I said I think YouTube specifically has not a, I suppose it's not a problem, but it's like pressure on people to read these books. You must read this book. You must read that book. Peer
well,
pressure.
yeah. I think more so along with that
Mm.
is things like there's a booktube tag going around saying it's the intimidating booktube tag. And it's
Yeah,
like, and it's like it's telling everybody that these things are intimidating, and or difficult. And I really have a problem with that because they're not difficult.
yeah,
Hi, Jenny.
yeah. Hello, everybody. There's a few people joined us. Yes, it's trying to make books more intimidating than they are, and the way you can speak about them can put people off just by saying that they're big, complicated. Some people overdo, how complex the prose is and things like this. Hey, Mark's here as well. Everybody saying hello. Everybody.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, well, Mark knows that we just read The Terror by Dan Simmons, and in my edition it was 930 pages or something like that.
Yeah.
And I found that much easier to read, like quicker to read, that I wanted to get back to it than some books that are less than 200 pages because I'm not
Mm,
interested in the thing. It doesn't
yeah.
mean one's intimidating or the other. It's just one worked well for me, but I wouldn't say it's intimidating or difficult. They're not difficult. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Well, last year, finally, I've spent years. I finally read Don Quixote that I've been meaning to read for years. And I think the size of it can feel intimidating, but when you just get down to reading it, it's just like any other book. You just take it chapter by chapter or section by section, and you just work through it. And if you enjoy it, you enjoy it, and if you don't, you don't.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
there's a couple European sort of literature ones that are
mm,
biggies that I haven't read yet. Like I haven't read War and Peace. I haven't done too much Russians,
mm,
but I started to read War and Peace in January, and I only got 30 pages in, and I'm going, I'm not feeling this. I'm putting it down, and I'm not. And I go, if it was 300 pages, I would have just pushed on.
mm.
But over 1,000 pages. I'm not interested to do that now because I don't want to take the whole month. I just want to read it, and so I put it aside. It's I wouldn't call that being intimidated or anything. It just it wasn't in the frame of mind for it. But that's not doesn't happen often for me.
Yeah, I think specifically there's a big classics thing. I'm trying to think. There's a couple of booktubers that really go in for the classics, and the way they speak about them is like there's some veneered document. I know I've heard Steve Donahue talk about this before, and said, "What are these bits of paper? They're books. Don't put them on big pedestals. It's just words on a page."
Yeah, and yeah, some people say, "Oh yeah, you have to read these," and you don't. Depends on what you're reading for. Like sometimes I feel I have to read something because I want to do it, or everything from an author. If I like an author, and I know for a fact that chances are not everything I read of theirs I'm going to like, but I'm still interested in reading their entirety. And but if somebody does want to learn about the history of literature, then they will have to read those things. But if you're not interested in that, then you don't need to.
Yeah, because there are many reasons to read stuff. I've read stuff when studying, and that's when you're going to force yourself to read it because you have to achieve what you want to in the study. There's no other way I would have read huge books on osteology and things like this, rather than the fact I had to for what I was doing at the time.
What were you reading books on osteology for?
Because I used to be a radiographer in a past life. I used to X-ray people.
Okay. Because I did that part of archaeology. Osteology, but
huge chunks of. It's when you say, "Oh, not only every bone has a name, but every bump on every bone has a name."
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and there's literature stuff that you get forced to read at the school. Who was it? Somebody commented the fact that people get put off things when they're forced to read them at school, but I found the opposite. I've got books like Graham Greene's Brighton Rock. I was forced to read that at school, and I actually love that book. Even though I had to study it for ages, but there can be points though that you can overstudy stuff and it'll just get too much for you. I think you just sort of had enough of it.
The problem I had was that some of the stuff I liked, but then it was like the teacher would say, "Oh, write an essay on this," and then like who the central character is or something like that, and then they turn around and say you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, meanwhile, you've backed everything up, you've given all the evidence from it, and I'm going, no, I'm actually not wrong. It's not the preferred character, but I think because I could have done it easily and just picked up another book and just copied down what they said, what it was, but I actually thought, so therefore I use my faculties to think.
Yeah, I think it's almost like the critical thinking thing. You need to think for yourself what the book means to you.
Yeah,
because no matter what a book is art, unless it's a book is going to be art. So what your interpretation of it is going to be totally different to somebody else's, quite easily. And if anybody can hear the barking in the background, I apologise for my dogs tonight. I think they've just lost their minds there. Hopefully it's not too bad. But yeah, it's your interpretation of stuff. What I see in a text, you may not see in a text, and somebody else may not see in a text.
And as long as you could back it up and give evidence of why you think that to me is legitimate.
But yeah, it's like reviewing a book. If people turn around to say, "I hate this book," and that's all they can say, I want to know why. What makes them dislike this book? Is it the characters? Is it the plot? Is it the way the narrative, the way the prose is put together? Just saying you hate something is, I guess.
But like Mark says, their teachers introduced him to many wonderful works. Most of mine did it. There was, when I went back to high school, I was older, and it was I think it was grade 9 that I had to do a catch-up year. And we were reading stuff in grade 9, like S.E. Hinton's The Insiders or whatever, I think it's called, or something like that. And I just thought it was horrible. And then so he gave me a huge stack of books over Christmas to read that were from grade 13, and it was like, oh, I love this stuff.
Yeah, one of my teachers, he actually read Lord of the Rings to us. He read the whole of Lord of the Rings to
Oh
us.
wow!
We had a section of one of the lessons. Luckily, I had the same teacher for 5 years, and he just sat down for half an hour a week and started with The Hobbit and went through the whole of Lord of the Rings, and that's why I ended up reading Lord of the Rings for the first time, because he absolutely loved it.
Horrible teachers, English, because before high school, I had a teacher that was reading the Chrysalids, and then he would, I that was the first time I'd sort of heard of it and heard of John Wyndham, and he was reading it, but he kept saying, oh, when do you think this is set? And so, like after the first time or something like that, I said, oh, I would guess that it's post nuclear war or something like that, or some travesty, something that's caused civilization to fall.
Mm.
And then right away he goes, "Oh, who did you speak to it about? Who told you that?"
Mm.
No, no one told me. I figured it out. Oh no, somebody had to tell you that, and it's like, piss off.
Yeah. So Aaron got me to read Mice and Men, Dracula and Shakespeare. I've never read Mice and Men. I do have a copy on my shelf that I picked up last year.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Mice and Men. I like his other ones. I like Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah, I picked up last year in a local charity shop. Somebody had got rid of their whole of their collection of them, and so I just picked up a huge chunk of all his books. So,
that's good.
But I just need to sit around and get around to actually reading them.
I would have loved to have done Dracula in school, but yeah, no, that wasn't part of the school. We did have to do of Mice and Men.
Yeah,
that was after I did Grapes of Wrath, which I loved.
Mm.
And then maybe if I would have done it the other way around, I might have like thinking of it now, I might have liked of Mice and Men if I did it the other way around.
Yeah. I for my final piece in my English exam, we were allowed to pick a book, and it could be one of theirs, or we could bring our own version in, our own book in, as long as they passed it. So I stupidly picked A Clockwork Orange, which is a great book, but the amount of examination I had to pick this book apart, well, with all the subtext and the language, and I couldn't have picked a more harder one for language wise than anybody. I just picked it because I thought, it's going to be a good book, not realizing what I'd have to do with it.
I'll keep shut up about that book.
It's a bit. I've read some of his other stuff. Like, I like A Clockwork Orange. I don't think it's as good as some people say they think it is. It's an interesting book, and I liked it more when I was about 14 years old than I do now, because I think I've realized
read it. I read it probably when I was 20 or 21, and I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
It just like I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But I kind of wonder if I would like it now, and that's why it is in the back of my mind that I should pick it up again at some point.
It's one of these books that's just very interesting about all the language wise, the way he does it all in slang, which is, in some ways, it reminds me of Shakespeare, because people say, Shakespeare is difficult to read because of the language and the prose he uses. You can say the same thing of books like Clockwork Orange, because of the slang he uses there. There's no real difference in reality. It's just, once you start reading something, you dial into it. You dial into the language.
Yeah, well, that's why I if anybody's watching and knows the answer to this, please let me know, because somebody had said that they were going to read Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert A. Heinlein, and I'd love to reread that. And I said I would, and I don't know who that was, but that's something that has a different style of language as well. But yeah, it is something that after a little while you get into it. And every single book, I finished one book and then I started another one. And I'm always, for the first 20 pages or so, it seems strange because I got used to the writing of the previous one. And then 20 pages to 30 pages, then I'm in.
Mark wants to know, did you like the film, Shawn?
Oh,
Clockwork Orange?
No. I got a story about what's his name? What's his name? The actor that was in there.
Oh, Malcolm. Oh, he always plays really weird characters. He was in a Star Trek film as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember. My brain's gone a bit.
Anyway, I was at a convention in it was Birmingham, I think. There was a convention there, and I was there to get some Babylon 5 signatures. And I was sort of strolling around, waiting for them to come. And he comes bursting out, like he was there. He comes bursting out in this thing, and yeah, Malcolm McDowell. Thanks, Aaron. I just sort of stop, and I figured, okay, he'll go around me. Boom, right into me, and I don't move that easily. So he went, and then all of a sudden, handlers were like, and they were gonna, try to tackle me down as if I attacked him, and I go, no, he attacked me. He ran into me.
I'm trying to think what other films he's been in. I can only think of the Star Trek film and that one. Caligula.
Oh, jeez.
The infamous Caligula.
Yeah, he's been a lot of stuff. I'm having trouble now to figure out what other stuff
he always plays these very weird characters.
But yeah, that's my Malcolm McDowell story.
And your Malcolm McDowell story. But I think you actually get the same problem with films sometimes that you do with books, of people venerating a film and saying it's some masterpiece, and you have to like it because it's such a work of art.
Yeah,
it's not the same degree, but you do get some films.
Well, the thing is that I find sort of interesting, maybe on the strange part is, like, if it's a film I really like or a book that I really like, and then I can articulate why I love this and why I think it's great or good or whatever, and then you get somebody else saying the same things, but that's why it's bad. That's the weirdest thing to me. It's like, wait a minute, those are the things that make it great, in my opinion. And a lot of people's opinions say, like Steve Donahue goes crazy about how bad Metropolis is. No, it's a great movie. The only thing I could think of, he's never seen a properly restored version of it.
Yeah, there's so many versions because I bizarrely like my brain's going a bit addled. Who was it who did the musical version?
Yeah, that
we're both losing our brains here, Sean.
Yeah, I actually like that version.
Yeah,
even though it's cut up, but I do like it.
But because of that is the reason we have the version we have now, because he did all this research and found prints of it that nobody had ever found before, and basically restored all those to do that version, and then other people afterwards used those and found some extra ones on top to do the full version that we can get hold of now.
Yeah, there was some pieces found in Argentina. They're still a little bit missing. Yeah. But it's the most complete the version, and they're using the original musical soundtrack as well.
Giorgio Moroder.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But yeah, and see, the thing is, I'm convinced that if anybody's seen that and seen, like, the cut up versions, it's like watching Nosferatu. It was cut up and chopped up so many times. And, a lot of people see those things and it doesn't make sense. Metropolis never really made sense. And then all of a sudden you see it in all its glory and you go, oh, okay, that makes sense now. That scene makes sense because you got this happening.
I read somewhere that something like 80 or 90% of films from that period of time no longer exist.
Yeah. It's because the
nitrate film didn't help.
It destroyed itself, but also too, nobody thought, like, the studios didn't think that anybody would be interested in it, so they melted down to get the silver out of it. And then it was only in the early 30s there were places like Cinema Francais, the BFI started up, and the Metropolitan, is it the Met in New York? They started collecting this, and people have said, oh, but if we would have started 10 years earlier, just think of what we would have got. And then somebody said, yeah, but if we just started 3 years later, look what we would have missed. So yeah, there's a lot missing.
Yeah, it's the way that people assume now, oh, because it's digital, it's fine. Whereas digital storage is actually can be worse because it all gets upgraded. That's why people like the Criterion Collection, when they master film, they then transfer it to film. When they remaster film,
see, the thing is,
and store it that way.
Film has a grain to it. It has a grain, and when a lot of times they put it to digital, they get rid of that, and it looks pristine,
waxy.
Yeah, and it's like that's wrong. That's not making it the way the preservation should be. Making it to the way it was when it was first seen on the screen, not making it what they think could be better, or getting rid of everything. Like doing digital is fine, but if it gets rid of all that kind of stuff, then that's not so good, and not my way.
So just checking over here. Somebody's covering alcoholism. I don't know what that's about. Conversation going on there. So I know we were saying about books intimidating you, whether they do or not. I must admit, sometimes the size of them in some ways intimidates me, because I just think, have I got that long to read the bloody thing? Or what? As you probably know, I'm reading The Wheel of Time now, and I'm looking at this, and it's 13 books long, which is just ridiculous as far as I'm concerned.
But the thing is, so like, you know, like a 1,000-page book, like Les Miserables. I read it again just this past month. Now, and people say, yeah, it's 1,400 pages. Hi, Gavin. Yeah, it's 1,400 pages, but then they'll wind up reading 4 or 5 250-page books.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. There's no difference. So you don't need to read it in a day. You know, you can read it over a long period of time. And like I say, there's that book tag that's up, because the intimidating book tag, and I was tempted to, but then the questions aren't really. It's misnamed, really. But I was going to just say, here's the tag. All you got to do is, okay, boys and girls, pull up your your big pants and man up, adult up, and pull up your big boy pants and your big girl pants, and just read.
I do think that a lot of books, though, a lot of people need good bloody editor, because some books are just, nobody seems to be able to write a single book now, and every book seems to be 600, 700 pages. Whereas to me,
people have said that with Les Miserables, but if you take all that stuff out, it makes it a weaker book for what it is, and you really don't see that until you finish it.
Maybe it's just me used to reading sort of science fiction books from the 60s and 70s that are all about between 100 and 200 pages long.
Yeah. Well, that was commercially, because you like, oh yeah, like, well, these things like this here, I just look at this and it'll say it doesn't, but usually it'll say a complete novel or something like that, you know.
Yes. It's because a lot of them ended up being serialized anyway. Because I think the shortest, that one's actually, that's 270. It's Harry Turtledove book. That's 270 pages, which is probably one of the shortest, newest books I've read for a long time, actually.
Yeah, but then you get something like well, for science fiction, Dune, that's 600 pages, I guess it is, or is it 800, depending on, I guess, the size of it, or but it's like, it doesn't feel like it's that big, though. That's the thing. There's so much that's going on, and the same as the Hyperion Cantos. They're big books, but it's like, how could you have gotten everything in there and developed the characters? See, that's the thing. In those short books, usually you don't get time to just sort of be with the character for a long time. It just a lot of things happen. I'm now reading the Book of the New Sun,
Yes,
and
one of my
and I,
favorite.
hmm?
One of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah, I'm liking it. I'm 200 pages in. I haven't read anything today, but I'm 200 pages in, and I'm thinking he could have done some editing because it's like, and then all I can hope is that this stuff comes to fruition
Yeah,
because he's just talking like he's talking to someone and something comes up and goes, oh, that reminds me of this, and he
yeah.
goes on a tangent.
There's lots of if you look into it, it's meant to be. He's an unreliable narrator for starters. He so-called says that he's got a perfect memory, and which he obviously hasn't. But also, it's meant to be a history. It's meant to be somebody's found it 1,000 years in the future and then translated it. So there's all these words that could mean double things in it. So
Yeah, we see that's not there yet. That's not even clear at the beginning because that's nothing like that. So that's what I mean. I'm because I've read the first two books before, but I don't remember them very well. So, and I'm hoping that it'll give me closure in a sense and make sense for everything.
Normally about the third or fourth read through is when you start thinking, okay, I still don't know what's going on, but I'm enjoying it. But
yeah, it's like I finally read through the Jack Vance Dying Earth tales, and I read the first two in the past, and I finally read through them, and it didn't really care for them that much. I like his other books better, Jack Vance. It just didn't work for me, and I'm not sure. This is better written. Definitely, it's better written.
I think Gene Wolfe was a better writer.
Yeah,
but then I'm a bit biased because I adore his work. You know,
so I don't mind he's rambling on about things and stuff like this, and it's kind of interesting in itself. And like I can see just from that, Dan Simmons, even though he doesn't mention this so much, he mentions Jack Vance Dying Earth a lot. But for the Hyperion Cantos, for the Endymion and the Rise of Endymion, he's got the character is the same thing. Like it's not that he remembers everything, but I won't give it away. But he knows what everybody thought and did.
Yeah.
He knows everything. But he's not an unreliable narrator. He is an extremely reliable narrator.
But yeah, I know some people who've just given up on Book of the New Sun after about 100 pages, just because.
I just got waylaid because I've been doing a few other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I gotta get back to it because I wanted to actually finish all four this week, but that's not gonna happen.
No,
that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm reading quite slow at the moment, so I'm just plodding along. I'm reading. Yeah, I'm.
Have you read the fifth book?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, if you ever get a chance to read the Night Side of the Book of the Long Sun, which is
I don't know that one.
No, that's his other trilogy, and it's based on a ship. It's a one of the colony ships, and that's really interesting as well.
See, that's the thing. It's kind of neat because you sort of think you're almost in medieval times here, but it's like, but he talks about that it's clear that they've colonized other planets. Like it's just said in passing. And I love the fact too is that he's a torturer, but he talks about it as if, oh, I'm going to go out and do do some gardening or something like that. It's not even. It's just nothing, you know.
Yeah, it's a matter of fact, and he takes such pride in his work.
Yeah.
It's one of those sections of science fiction books that feel like fantasy books. You know, there's a few of them. The Many Colored Land is the other one that comes to mind. Obviously, one is a science fiction one that does feel like a fantasy one. I think any other ones that come to mind.
Well, like even
the Dragon books from Anne McCaffrey ones.
Oh yeah, but he Dragon
right, it's the Pern ones, yeah.
Dragons of Pern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dragon Riders, yes, they're technically science fiction, but they all feel
Yeah, they are.
fancy.
Yeah, but they are science fiction.
Yeah.
They are science fiction.
Yeah.
But even the Tales of Dying Earth,
Yes.
there was magic in it, but it was science fiction at the same time.
Yeah. There's a because it's trying to work out whether the wizards in there are doing wizards, wizardy spells, or whether that's something to do with technology, but nothing's ever really explained. So you just sort of
So, but I am enjoying it. That's the thing, and that's all I need to do is I'm sort of getting lost in his sort of ramblings, and now he's on his way to, or he's supposed to do a duel or something like that. I would like to say I'm 200 pages in. So, and he's just rambling on about. I just love it. It's like when somebody says something and then he just like he does literally go on a tangent. Oh, that reminds me of so and so, and then you get down to the page and then we're back.
Gosh, sounds like my dog's been killed in the background.
but stuff like this, everybody says it's a difficult book. And it's I don't think there are things that are difficult books. They're just books that you have to pay some attention to. And you get more if you reread them. It's like the Hyperion Cantos. You could read that just superficially and have a nice space opera. But then you can start peeling away the layers and see all this other stuff if you want to. It's not a difficult book. It's just it allows you to do other things with it. Same as what's the Samuel Ardini big book? Crap. Take the name. Dahlgren. Everybody says that's a difficult book, and it's like it's not if you just pay attention to it. And the thing is, you're not going to understand it fully in the first read, and probably never understand it because there's never meant to be an answer to it. So just enjoy it and just and things like that. And it's like it's if you want a frustrating reader, read A.E. Van Vogt.
I've only ever read short stories. I must admit, I keep meaning to get around to.
I love him, and his short stories are really good. But he'll take 3 or 4 short stories that are different, and then mush them together and make a fiction novel. But he changes the stories, and then he'll take one of those stories and reuse it again for a different novel. And he's the kind of writer that you start a page or a scene, and you're as if you're thrown in deep water. You're going, everything is weird, everything is strange, and then all of a sudden, a few pages, or maybe even just on that page, you sort of get grips to what's going on, and then he throws you a curveball to something else that just sort of pulls that out of the water, and he just keeps doing that over and over and over again. Introduces new stuff every page or two, but it's just fascinating how he does it, and I love his stuff for that reason. But again, is that a difficult book? I don't think it's difficult. I think it's different. I read an article about 5 or 6 years ago. An Australian professor at a university wrote this article, and she said that the students that were coming in to her class had been of the generation when Harry Potter came out. That's all they read. They never read anything past that. So that you give them simple books, or what she thinks are simple books, and they're like a fish out of water because they want it to be on the level of Harry Potter, and it's not, because they've never gone beyond that. And does that mean that those books are difficult to them? But it's their own fault.
Yeah, I've read a bit of the first Harry Potter book, but I got bored. But from what I remember, like I've read if you read that and then you read the Northern Lights books, prose wise and technique wise, there's so much difference. Like Rowling's not got the. I'm trying to find the best way to say this. Her writing has not got the depth. Yeah, it's not got the depth that like in the Northern Lights books, even though they're both children's books technically.
Well, it's like I've known several people in their 30s and 40s. Like I've just recently, in the past couple of years, Mark and I read was the first time The Hobbit. Yeah. And I've known people in their 30s and 40s read it, and they think that's a difficult book. And I'm going, excuse me, this was written for 10-year-old, like under 10,
for kids.
and that's why I didn't like it, because like I haven't read too much literature of that for that age group. But when I read, when I have read recently, it's the authors talk down to the reader. And that's what I disliked about it, because they're always talking down. It's like, oh, do you understand what we're doing here? You know, basically. And it's like, oh, that's just horrible. But for a 5 or 6 year old, perfectly fine. But I don't know how an adult could find that difficult, you know, as to understand it. And it comes to language too. I guess that's the other thing, where the writing of Harry Potter books ages.
As you get to later books, I'm guessing.
Oh, okay.
Because you get the first one, and it's a bit like the films. If you watch the films, which I've actually watched them all, they get darker and darker as they're going along. When you get people like Alfonso Cuarón, who does, I think it's a third or fourth one, and that suddenly gets really, really dark. But he's a great director, and he just manages to twist it very dark. And I'm guessing the books do a similar thing.
Oh, okay. But but they still don't go very far, I guess, if that's all you go. But I can understand people like you were saying about Shakespeare, where Shakespeare is not like reading a Stephen King or something like that, or Harry Potter. The language is a bit different, but it's not impenetrable.
No.
And that's the thing. Like there were a couple years ago I think it was for Horror Mayhem, maybe the first year. But for some reason, like a bunch of people were reading Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. And I always thought, like when people ask me for a classic, I always thought that was a good one to tell people, oh, it's an easy book to read.
Yeah.
You might find it interesting because of the weirdness of it. But all of a sudden, at that time, there were so many people, booktubers and commenters, saying they found it so difficult they couldn't understand the language. And that was the first time I came across this. And so I started asking questions. And I guess it's just that it's a different sentence structures, like Victorian writers like Charles Dickens have different sentence structures. But and you can get more used to it. But like we said, that you get into the groove of it once you're reading it. If people just put the time in, but it doesn't I wouldn't use the word that's difficult. It just means that it's different, and you've got to accept that it's different and learn.
Yeah, it's like the one that really bugs me is people go, "Is a book dated?" And I'm thinking, what do you mean by that? Because any book, when it's written, everything in that book is to the time of the author. So that's the author's world that they've created there. So are you saying that, especially with science fiction, when they say things like the computers are totally different to what they were there? But I'm saying in that world, that is what it's like. In Asimov's Foundations book, people sit in darkened rooms and smoke cigars, and it's all male dominated. That is the world he created, and that's right for that world. So does that date the book? No, it's just different. It's what's going on then.
Yeah.
But even the language of the text, as you said, the sentence structure, especially Victorian books, like you read, even you start reading things like Wells and stuff like that, his writing style is very matter of fact, isn't it?
Yeah, and
very straight up.
And you can have sort of convoluted sentences with colons and semicolons. If you want something really like that, is read some very proper 18th century stuff. See, this is what I thought as well, Jenny, is that it was easy to read, but people did, and it was the first time they thought it was difficult to read.
Mm.
And I had to ask questions, and that's what I've come to is that they because and then I found out that the other stuff that they read was stuff that was written very simple, like simple sentence structures. Like I'm reading a lot of, and Mark is there too, of that sort of French or even the Russian translators that are being translated today, and it's very simple language. They're not making it difficult.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in 100 years, they'll probably look back at that translation and say, "Oh well, it's a little archaic or something
Yeah.
like that. It's a little stilted." But today, it's like a hot knife through butter. But the translation when it was done 100 like with Les Miserables or Count of Monte Cristo 100 and some years ago,
Yeah.
it is a bit stilted, but it's still not impenetrable. That's the thing.
The thing though with translations is the translator can make or break the book.
But I do think that the translation can be of the time, as you're saying too. It can be of the time.
I've got a book of Greek science fiction stories that was published a few years back, and all those stories are all by different authors, but they've all been translated by the same person, so they all read very similar, which is in some ways is a bit of a shame because you're obviously not getting the feeling from the different authors.
Yeah, and then you get something else that makes, but the opposite thing is Emile Zola's 2020 novel cycle, and there's different translators, and it's they do read differently, but they shouldn't read differently.
Yeah.
When I read Thornton closer to 19th century, but what did you find it difficult to read, or did you just have to? Did it take you like 10 pages and then you're into it?
Yeah, true. People do think Tolkien's hard to read. People go, I've seen many a video of people saying, is this going to be hard to read? Because obviously Tolkien's descriptions of the land, because basically Middle-earth is a character in the book. So he does all these quite elaborate descriptions of it. All people complain that it's slow-paced, which is the one that gets to me. And I'm thinking, well, I don't want it over in 100 pages. I want a slow.
Well, that's the thing. And people say that with movies too. It was you did that April and King Kong movie. I watched it a little before that, and I watched some of the extras that are on there in the commentary. And people have complained that nothing happens for like 40 minutes into it or something like that. But you get the characters, you get the feel of that. And people don't want that. They just want it to jump right to the action, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's too bad at times because you lose losing yourself.
Yeah. So, Gavin, you read it when TJ devoured it? Yeah, my brain's definitely slowing as well, Gavin. I think all of us as teenagers used to just inhale books. Well, I did.
Yeah, well, especially since my COVID, my reading has slowed down a little bit, and sometimes I can't read because I can't understand what I'm reading.
Yeah,
brain, that's my COVID. But there's something that I like, and I've mentioned this before, but I got to get to right place because I don't want to start it again. Every time I've started this book, something has happened bad to me, and it's what the hell's the name of it now? Oh, see, again, I can't think of the name. It's a great big honking 18th century book of letters. It's all letters. It's a Jesus. But anyway, I love the language in it. It's like these long sentences, like you do the colon and the semicolons. So like you got a sentence that's a whole page, not a whole page, whole paragraph, and I love that. But I want to get back to reading it. But every time I've read it, well, the first time I read it, I got shingles. Second time I started reading it, I got shingles. And then the third time I got evicted from my last place. What was Sorry, go back to Aaron's. I didn't read that.
Aaron's was, where was Aaron? Aaron. I read Dorian Gray and Invisible Man, 20,000 Legacy when he was 12 because of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen film. Yeah, Sean Connery's last film before he retired, because it was a bit of a question. I quite enjoyed it actually, but
yeah, that's great when you see something like that and you go back to the originals.
yeah,
That's great. I love that when films do that.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. People complain, Tolkien goes on, and they got a shelf with Robin Hobb, Jenny Wood, Robert.
Yeah, those things. When I see the Robert Jordan, is Jordan the Wheel of Time?
Yeah,
yeah, and it's like I'm not into fantasy too much, but when I see something like that, I just go, I don't like fantasy, and there's no way in hell I'm gonna spend that much time in that world because I don't like fantasy.
Well, I said the thing is, I've just started the first book, and I've worked on the theory. I thought, well, I'm not going to read another one of them. As much as I'm enjoying this, I think it's 13 books. So I'm thinking, okay, am I ever going to get to the end of this series? Probably not. I'll probably read the second book next year or something.
I just saw, I think I just saw a whole set of it for on sale, or well, not on sale, but for sale, and it was like almost £400 for the hardcovers.
Mm.
Yeah, it was, yeah, and that's what I mean. You like, I can enjoy, like, I could slow down my reading and just just absorb the language and how the structure of the sentences are, and I really enjoy that at times. I'm not really enjoying the story so much, but I like the language of it.
Yeah,
and it's fun.
Reddit is now holding their prose line text. I think some are, and I think some aren't. I think there's still people who enjoy the language and enjoy playing around with language, but in the same way that people expect to leap straight into a lot of stuff now, straight into stories.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They don't want to, when I read or reread Count of Monte Cristo last year, there was somebody else that was in there that generally he reads. I won't say who it is, but he reads a lot of modern thrillers, and I think also Stephen King and all that kind of stuff. And so it like a lot of that gets to action quickly.
Yeah.
And Count of Monte Cristo is a slow burn. You get a storyline that goes this way, but then it comes back, and then you join another storyline, and then they all just sort of get pulled in. And I just love that because you're exploring all these other worlds and other people. You get to know them really well.
Yeah, I read for years. I've never read any of Fleming's Bond books, and I finally read Casino Royale, and it's quite amazing how little actually happens in that book, really. Bar some overt sexism and racism chucked in the middle of it, but
Aaron's reading through them all now.
Yeah. So compared to like modern thrillers, there's too many thrillers in my opinion. But people
people just want action. They just want to get to the action, and I'm going, action is fun in movies and all this stuff, but I also want to know about the characters. I want some action here.
Jenny, as I said, I just started the Eye of the World. I'm actually loving it. I've avoided it for 35 years to read them because I originally saw them on the shelf from about 91 when they came out, and I remember just looking at the Darryl Sweet covers and thinking those covers are terrible. I don't want to read that.
But Jenny, is it? Or maybe I'll wait until Sunday to ask you this question. But I was wondering, is it because he just puts on maybe too much wordage and rambles around too much, just bloviating and expanding it, where it probably a little bit of editing might work?
Yeah, see, I'm not finding that personally, but we all have different sort of pick up on different things, don't we?
Yeah, like to me, the book should be as long as it needs to be. I know that makes no sense at all.
Yeah. Yes, you could. You could technically read The Lord of the Rings a few times. Though if you go through all the unfinished tales, and I think there's about 12 or 13 books of the extra bits, including the Silmarillion unfinished tales, more unfinished tales, or whatever they're all called. I know I've got a load of them. But Tolkien's text, it gets his actual prose changes very much between like the Silmarillion and Lord of the Rings anyway. So people complaining about his text in the Lord of the Rings, give them a copy of the Silmarillion and it'll totally blow their minds.
Yeah, well, the friend of mine who likes it, like he realized that I probably wouldn't have liked The Hobbit, but he says I'll like probably Lord of the Rings if I get there better. But then he said I'll probably really like the Silmarillion.
Casino Royale is Fleming's most conservative Bond. I keep meaning to get onto the second one. I wasn't overly keen on the first one, but I will get onto the second one at some point. It's on my list of many things to pick up, but they are quite short, so I should be able to fit it in between something. Weirdly, I read they had some of the books. I think it was You Only Live Twice. It might have been The Spy Love Me. They did extra novelizations of. So as well as you had the original Fleming ones, you had authors doing novelizations of them. And I remember reading the Diamonds Are Forever was the other one they did. I remember reading that as a kid. And that
yeah, I heard about that, and I just find that extremely odd. When the source material was a book to begin with.
Well, they tried to, when Blade Runner was released, they were trying to get Philip K. Dick to write a novelization of the film. And he basically told them where to go.
What film? Sorry, I didn't.
Blade Runner.
Oh.
When they were doing Blade Runner, they tried to talk Philip K. Dick into writing a novelization of the film, of his own. And you think, but what? And basically, he told them where to go.
Yeah, you see, like that. There's a writer that I like his short fiction better than his novels, and the same way in general with Heinlein. And because I sort of sometimes like with Heinlein, I am convinced, like he wanted the big time. He wanted the mainstream, and you don't get that with short stories. So, but the thing is, he didn't know how to write a novel. he was pad out a short story.
Yeah, I think his best work is Heinlein's definitely his best work is his short fiction.
Yeah. And the same with Philip K. Dick. I just don't care, but I do have a soft spot for Do Androids.
Yeah, I like his long books, but that's. But then I was like, there's always a moment in his books that you go along there and you think it's vaguely normal, and it just totally goes off the rails, and you think, okay, that's the Dick moment, as I always call it.
Well, yeah, for somebody who thinks that knowledge was beamed to his through from outer space, there's something wrong there.
I know. Well, because his last book is because God was talking to him. His last few books.
He's up there with L. Ron Hubbard. But the thing is, L. Ron Hubbard knew what he was doing, I think.
Yeah, no, L. Ron Hubbard was just out for the money, wasn't he? And the fame.
And Phil K. Dick may not have known what he was doing.
Yeah, no, he had severe mental health problems. If I've got his I've got a biography of him his that was written many years ago. That basically his mental health, he struggled so much with it.
Yeah,
and basically just
Ron Hubbard was just batshit insane, but not mentally ill.
Yeah.
I don't think it anyway.
Yeah.
So is it the 15? You've read it actually 15 times? Like I'm assuming that's just a bit of hyperbole, but
I've probably read it around about there. I don't know how many times I've read it.
Wow.
Yeah, I've read many years ago. I read it, but can't remember who wrote it actually, because there was a few writers that used to write books like that around at the time.
I just find it odd that they would do that, like with when the source material was a book to begin with.
Oh, Total Recall, because that's from a Philip K. Dick short story. Yeah. They got Piers Anthony to write a novelization of it, because I've got the novelization of it.
Yeah, novelized. Okay, yeah, because it wasn't a novel to begin with, but yeah, that kind of makes sense. But it's I've never read the Alien that the novelization, but I've been told that it's really, really good.
Oh yeah, Alan Dean Foster's work on novelizations, he's just knew what to do and knows how to expand characters and within the bounds, and basically he's the master of any sort of novelization because he could work around it. But then his own work that's not novelization is very good, and everybody always forgets that.
I remember reading a few novelizations at time, and I just go, this just reads like the script. They might as well just publish a script because there's nothing else that's happening. There's nothing else. There's no atmosphere. It's just reads.
Yeah, it all depends on the writer they get. If they get somebody who said the quality of Alan Dean Foster, they can do it well. But then if they get somebody that's just writes it straightforward, it's just dull. It's just a script. Jenny reads. You read it once a year. I haven't got time to.
I think what I'm going to have for the next several years is going to be Les Miserables. I'll probably wind up reading that once a year.
Spoiler me, Fleming told Eon Productions they could only use the title, but he was embarrassed because he was embarrassed by the original book. Interesting.
Why is it little dogs are the noisiest?
Oh, the one that's going there is the bigger one.
Oh, is it?
It's got a mixture of a big one and a small one at the moment, which I apologize to everybody for. They're not normally this bad. And I've got a little one in the room with me who's perfectly quiet. She is. Where is she? Actually, she's on my feet. I've got a little Pomeranian. Who's normally a yappy one, who's just quietly put down by my feet. But I will give the little dog in the other room because he's not feeling very well. So.
Now
the Alien novelizations are really, really good. I like the novelization of The Black Hole, which was
that was one that I did read, and I thought
because it sort of vaguely tried to explain the ending, which is just totally out of it.
But I should read. Like I never liked the second Alien film, Aliens. I just thought that was like, okay, I'm looking at my watch. Okay, jump scare. Okay. Jump scare, and it was just tick box of jump scare doing all this stuff, and I found it so tiring.
I quite like the fact that they just tried to do something different with it. At least they didn't try to remake the first one.
Yeah, I liked the first one. The third one on the prison planet I thought was better.
Yeah, there's a couple of cuts of that one because it was butchered by people and things, but I do love the bit when they're running through the prison trying to shut down all the doors. Oh, hi Jim. See there.
What's this? There's a series by Alan Dean Foster, not his novelizations. There's a short series he did. I can't remember the name of it.
Spellsinger ones.
Sorry?
Spellsinger?
Yes. Yeah. Or
yeah.
No, that's fantasy, isn't it?
Well, sort of. It's a bit. It's anthropomorphic animals. It's quite interesting. It's
there's another.
There's also the ones in the Commonwealth ones.
Yes. Yeah, that's the one I remember liking. I think that's them. Yeah.
And he's done some really good. I've got a couple of his collections of short stories that are really good as well.
He's another writer that I always when I think of him, I think of James Blish, and when I think of James Blish, I think of Alan Dean Foster for some reason. I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to that, but I do.
So Jim, I've only just started rereading books for a second time. Great Gatsby, East of Eden, and All Flesh is Grass. I'm reading
reading that in July.
Yeah, I'm actually just about to reread that myself. All Flesh is Grass.
Well, I'm reading that in July, so that's going to be the 4th week of Rocket
Summer. Yeah, I can't imagine reading anything 15 times. There's many things I've read 15 times, I think. Yeah.
Well, I've probably read City more than 20. I know that. I've read City so many times.
I read the novelization of Nosferatu,
Oh,
which is a remake of the old Nosferatu. Oh, the one with Klaus Kinski,
oh,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
That was my alarm.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Al's just joined us and he's just leaving us, or he's been here and he's been quiet because he's going to work. He's going to do useful things. So bye, Al. Thanks for joining us, Al. Anyway, I hope the dogs didn't annoy you too much today, Al. I've done stuff with Al before, and one of them's gone off in the background and like, no. But anyway, I need to wrap up soon anyway because I've only leave my poor suffering wife there with them too much, and as she can't walk, she can't even run after them. So
need a BB gun then.
Yeah, but that's fine. She'll have to try and get to a wheelchair, shuffle across. But Jenny's off as well. Bye, Jenny. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, she's gonna be.
Say a bit about that's quite interesting. Andy's Serkis narration on the books. See, I always think about the Andy Serkis narrating the Lord of the Rings books. Could take you out of it. I've got a copy of the BBC Today radio version, a fully dramatized radio version, which I've got a copy of the whole Lord of the Rings, and that's good.
Yeah, I've listened to that. That kind of liked. Yeah,
that's got Ian Holm in it, and they've also did a version of The Hobbit, which I have as well.
Well, they also did a really good. Well, it's fairly good of Foundation, the Foundation trilogy as well. What BBC did.
I've not heard that actually.
Yeah, I've even got a book that's the scripts of it as well.
I knew they did it. I've just never been able to get hold of a copy. Well, I'm not really searched that hard, but
I think on archive.org, I think it's there or was.
Oh, I might have to have a look for that.
But yeah, the BBC has done some interesting adaptations.
Put it one way, as long as it's better than the Apple TV series, I'll be happy.
I haven't seen that yet. I will probably. The thing is that his daughter is sort of an executive producer of some sort. Robin is a producer of some sort on it, and but then again, her and her Janet Asimov signed off the trilogy of Susan Calvin, which was just bad. But they signed off for that to write it. Oh, so yeah.
Yeah, no, the Foundation series I think might be quite an interesting. The Apple one, if you just counted it as normal science fiction, but because it's trying to be Foundation, it seems to have missed Asimov's point in a big way from what I've seen of it. And normally I'm quite good at detaching myself from the books to the thing, so it normally doesn't worry me too much. But for some reason, that one annoyed me.
Well, somebody, and I don't know I can't remember what streaming service it is, but has apparently bought Waystation by Cinema, and they're going to do it. The thing that I read was that they're calling it a thriller.
Okay, have they read the book?
Exactly.
That's very weird.
It's like calling, like Jim mentioned, All Flesh is Grass. Oh, it's a romance. Huh?
Anyway, I need to wrap this up now because it sounds like all carnage is going on behind me in the other room.
Well, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you very much for joining me, Shawn. I said I apologise for my yappy little dogs to everybody that were coming to us this week. If anybody comes back to see me next week, I will try and do something with them. Maybe give them to the neighbours or something.
Muzzle.
Anyway, thank you everybody for joining us, and I will probably see people around various places soon. So good night and have a good evening, everybody.